Have you ever gone through an event that shocked you so profoundly that it has always lingered in the back of your mind, making you question your reality? Hear the stories of people who have gone through situations in which they believe cannot be explained with critical thinking, leading them to wonder if we live in a simulated world. From a person claiming they've experienced quantum immortality and have died in a different timeline, to one person alleging that they saw how they were going to die in a dream and went through the exact same scenario hours later. Join me on this long read to hear all of this and more. Consider subscribing to the channel if you end up enjoying the video, and checking out our Instagram and Twitter at Book of Valis for updates and such. It helps support the channel. But either way, let's begin. I've been seeing the same guy at random for over 20 years, all over creation. This is a topic that has questioned my sanity and haunted me for years and years. I've been seeing the same man since I was in my late teens. I'm 38 years old now. I started seeing him in random places around the age of 17. I live in a heavily populated area, and I have lived over the tri-state area. I've seen him in parking lots, I've seen him in stores, I've seen him at events, but the craziest one was I saw him at a destination wedding in St. Martin about 10 years ago. I approached him at that wedding and asked him if he has been following me for years because I've seen him all over the place. As you can imagine, the conversation immediately became one of the awkwardest ones I've ever been a part of. He kind of laughed and shrugged it off, but I could tell he knew he was seeing me all over the place also. There's been spans of over a year to 2 years where I don't see him whatsoever, and it seems like it comes in waves. My life has changed considerably, as you can imagine, since the age of 17. I now have a wife and a child. My most recent sighting of the guy was in a store called Bye Bye Baby. I was buying things for my newborn. Within the same month, I saw him in a Home Depot about 30 miles away. Every time this happens, he pretends like he doesn't see me, but I can tell he's as sketched out as I am. The last sighting of this guy was a couple months ago in the store for baby stuff, and that was the final straw. I'm telling you, if I see this guy again, I'm going to get to the bottom of it. I don't even care what it takes. It's something I've pondered over for so long, and like I said, I question my own sanity. I'm also a male. For frame of reference, the guy that I've been seeing is a lot older than me, but it seems like he hasn't aged a bit, as crazy as that sounds. Like I said, I know the man is real. I've talked to him face to face, but that still doesn't make me question my own sanity. I think I saw a time traveler. So this happened about a week ago, but my memory is still pretty fresh. My boyfriend and I were in a car on the way to get dinner and chatting casually. Everything was normal. As we pulled up to a red light, somebody caught my attention. There was a guy, I'd say between 15 and 18 years old, walking on the sidewalk across the street. I noticed him because he looked like he was straight out of 2004. Baggy jeans, gray beanie, and a black t-shirt over a long-sleeve white shirt. I thought it was funny, figured he was some kind of skater, and pointed it out to my boyfriend, and made some joke about the guy being from the 2000s. We both agreed that he looked out of place, and that's when we started joking that he must be a time traveler. I said something like, he's probably thinking, whoa dude, where am I? And as soon as I said it, the guy started to look around like he was confused. We were in a car and across a busy street from him. No way he heard us. We remarked that it was weird as we watched the guy look around confused for a few moments. Then we both looked away for no more than half a second. I don't remember why, and when we turned back, the guy was gone. At first we laughed and thought it was funny, but the more we looked, the more we realized he had nowhere to go, and he really just completely disappeared. I can't stress this enough. We barely looked away and had nowhere to go that we wouldn't be able to see him. We both freaked out and drove most of the rest of the way in silence while we thought about time travel. We haven't really talked about it since, but we agreed that it was obviously really weird. I experienced the glitch where I saw the quote-unquote simulation that we are in. Someone experienced it with me and saw the same thing. We were all completely sober. Quick preface, I'm currently driving home from my lunch break, so I'm using Zuri to talk. Hopefully this makes sense. So back in the summer, we had a huge friend trip to Lake Powell. For anyone that has been there, you know it's absolutely beautiful. Anyways, we were boating through the canyons and going deeper and deeper into the canyons Lake Powell. At one point, I thought in my mind something along the lines of, damn, this place is so beautiful. It almost looks fake, or like it was designed to look this way by something. When I started saying that in my mind, a friend turned around to me and said, dude, it feels like we're in a movie and we are looking at movie props. It looks so fake. And I turned around and looked and said, dude, what the fuck did you just say? I was thinking the exact same thing. We were both freaking out about it, but then it got a little freakier. We were sitting at the back of the boat, looking at our 10 or so friends, standing up, while the boat was slowly going through the canyons, and as I watched them looking at the scenery, I experienced an altered state of consciousness. The best way to describe it is the facade of the human experience was dropped, and all of a sudden my friends looked like gods or angelic beings experiencing Earth and just enjoying the moment. My friend turned to me and said, "Dude, look at our friends. They're so beautiful and alive. They look like angels." And I knew at that moment we were both experiencing the same thing. The best way to describe what we saw is it looked like we placed ourselves in a video game and we were enjoying what we created. It's super hard to describe this experience. If you've seen The Maze Runner, you know how they make you forget everything before you go into the maze, but yet you have an existence before? It felt like that. That nature of reality teased us and slightly withdrew, and we saw our friends and this earth for what it could truly be for a brief moment in time. I heard a story of a man who experienced something similar, where at random times he would also quote-unquote tap in to this outside reality whilst being sober. He came up with a theory that human consciousness in our brains can act like a needle finding the groove of a vinyl record. Once we tune in specifically and find ourselves in this quote-unquote groove, music can be played. Or in other words, we can start experiencing some fascinating things. I have to find where I read this though, but supposedly it happens randomly to a lot of people. Regardless if you have a mental health issue like anxiety or if you're going through a rough patch in your life, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. And this should be accessible to anyone, anywhere, even from the comfort of your own home. That leads us to today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp strives to make therapy more affordable and more accessible. And this is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. The cool thing about BetterHelp is that it makes finding a therapist easier because it's online. It's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days, making it easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. Check out the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/bookofalice. Clicking that link helps support the channel, and it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect to a therapist and see if it helps you. If you ultimately don't think your therapist is the right fit for you, which is a common thing in therapy, you can easily switch to a therapist for free without worrying about the insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. Our experiences matter, our feelings matter, but I know that sometimes when I tried to juggle my work and school life, I was left mentally exhausted and preferred to suppress my emotions, knowing deep down I should probably do something about it. If you're someone trying to take your first step in participating with therapy, I think this is a great way to get comfortable of the idea of sharing your emotions with other people. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click that link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/bookofalice, and thank you once again BetterHelp for sponsoring this channel. My dog still visits me a year and a half after his death. My family had a big bear-looking chocolate lab named Duke, who was awesome. He was super chill and would just lay on the floor and cuddle all the time. He passed from liver cancer after a short battle, a year and a half ago. I have no mental health issues at all, and I live a totally normal life. However, I still see him in the corner of my eye in my room. It's always in my peripheral, but it's totally him. I can even see his back rising as he breathes. I'm usually alerted because I can just sense his warmth and presence nearby. The crazy part is, my other dog JJ, who was like a son to Duke, notices the presence of another soul nearby when I do. It's only for a few seconds usually, but it feels so good knowing Duke's soul is still roaming. This actually has me scared. My son is 2.5 months old and only has so many clothes. I watch his clothes every week and I dress him every day, so I know what clothes he has since I see him quite often. A few weeks back, my husband and I picked out some outfits for him from Macy's because we had a gift card. I saw the cutest gray onesie with blue foxes on it and bought it for him for bedtime. Tonight, during our usual bedtime routine, I dressed him in his onesie and laid him down for bed. My husband is playing on his game and I had to run to the bathroom. On the way back to the room, I had some anxiety and wondered if this motherly worry would ever end. When I came back, I saw the exact same outfit on the bed. I can't describe the fear that I felt. It wasn't like a scary movie fear, but I felt sick to my stomach and like something was wrong. My husband said he's always had 2 outfits, but I know for a fact he hasn't. I know every article of clothing he has. I've pulled every tag off of his clothes before I've put them on. I would have known if he had 2 of these. I feel very sick right now, and I feel like I've changed universes without realizing it, and I don't know when. I died last night, but I'm still here. So this actually happened last week. It just took me some time to come to terms with it. I got a phone call from my next door neighbor late in the evening asking if I can help him move a mattress into his upstairs. His mom is ill and has a big heavy sleep number bed. I of course ran over to help because they're great neighbors. I get over there and his friend, who is also a priest, was there to help. I helped them figure out how to separate the mattress from the bed so we could fit it upstairs. We get it all moved up and back in place when my neighbor asks if I can help them move an armory upstairs too. I think nothing of it, and we pull it out of his travel trailer and start bringing it up to the front stairs of his house. This is where I died. The front stairs are 11 steps. I was on the lower end of the armory, about 6 steps up, when my neighbor and his friend lose a handle on the armory and it comes crashing down on me, and I fall backwards towards the pavement. I then wake up in my dining room to my phone ringing and my wife asking me if I'm going to answer the phone. It's my neighbor asking me if I can help move a bed upstairs for his mom. I go over there and meet his priest friend again, as this has been the first time I met him. I say I can help with the bed, but I cannot help with the armory. My neighbor was like, "How do you know about the armory?" I then proceeded to tell them I'm pretty sure I just died. I spent the next hour talking with the priest. He had so many questions. My neighbor didn't believe it until I described the upstairs bedroom in perfect detail, down to the metal mattress frame on the floor and the intricate headboard leaning against the wall. And I had never been upstairs in their house before. The priest asked me what I saw after I died. I told him I never actually died. Before it happened, I woke up at my dining room table. I died in late 2015. I was given a second chance. I've never used Reddit before, but a friend of mine was talking to me about the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit, so I decided to share my story here, since I don't have any explanation for it almost 3 years later. Rewind back to September 2015. I was a freshman who had just entered high school 2 weeks prior. Already school was weighing down on me, and I'd been continuing a habit I had of going on walks to clear my mind. On this day, I'd been walking around a pond near my house. There's a trail that goes around the pond, and then the trail leads up to a set of abandoned train tracks on the other side, which sit about 15 feet above the path and pond below. After walking the circle, I was crossing the train tracks when I decided I wanted some ice cream. The fastest way to get to the ice cream shop was to take the path below the train tracks, but there isn't any way to cross the pond without going all the way back around, and being 14 years old, I decided that I could just jump from the tracks onto the path below and keep walking. Looking down from above, it didn't seem to be that far of a jump, so that's what I did. The next thing I remember after that was being half conscious and in an ambulance. Everything was extremely blurry and the paramedics sounded slightly panicked. I wasn't able to move either of my legs, so I think they were both broken. This scene continued on for a few minutes, until we arrived at the hospital and I was wheeled into the emergency room on a stretcher. I only had a few minutes in the emerge before I eventually lost all consciousness, and that was the last thing I saw. After I'd been unconscious for what felt like about an hour, I opened my eyes and I was on the ground. I just hit the ground after jumping, but this time I was fully conscious. I hadn't noticed this before I jumped, but there had been a car parked watching me. I think they thought I was attempting suicide, but it probably looked that way, and the people in it had jumped out and called an ambulance for me. The ambulance ride had been the exact same as it was the first time, and I was put into the same emergency room that I had quote-unquote died in before. The only difference between the two events were that I was fully conscious this time, and my injuries were much minor. I was discharged from the hospital the same night with only stitches in my lip, a slightly fractured jaw, and a mild concussion. For a while after this, I assumed that the first scenario had just been a weirdly coincidental dream that I'd had for a while I was unconscious, so I didn't consider it anything abnormal. It wasn't until a few weeks later when my mom told me that the people who had helped me said that I had been conscious the entire time. I hadn't been knocked out after hitting the ground or anything, so the entire scenario managed to happen in the few seconds it took me to hit the ground, while I was still conscious. Anyways, I'm not very good at describing things, especially with how blurry this day was, now that it was years ago, but I'm 17 now, and I still have no way to explain what happened to me on that day, other than I died, and was given a second chance. I didn't exist for an entire afternoon when I was 16. I stumbled across this subreddit today and I immediately thought of a story that my friends and family still talk about. This happened in 2009 when I was 16 years old. It was the first weekend of summer and nobody was home. When I woke up at around 11 a.m., I grabbed a snack and went down to the basement to watch TV. I had plans to hang out with friends at 3 p.m. that day. Like I said before, I started watching TV at around 11, knowing I had 4 hours before I was supposed to head over to my friend's house. I had only been watching TV for about 30 minutes when my mom came down the stairs asking me where I'd been all day. I said, "What are you talking about? I've been awake for less than an hour." I look at my watch and see that it's well past 5 in the afternoon. I run upstairs and check my phone to see that I had several missed calls from my friend and my mom. My mom's side of the story is what makes me nauseous when I think about this, even to this day. She was with my little brother at his baseball game from 1 to 3 that day. She and my brother were home when I supposedly woke up and went down to the basement, but neither of them have any memory of even seeing me that morning. When my mom got home at around 3, she checked the entire house for me, including the basement where I had been sitting on the couch watching TV. It's been 10 years and I still have no idea what happened on that day. It is by far the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. And although I talk about it with my family like it's a funny little thing that happened, it genuinely chills me to my bones thinking about it. I think Updo Reddit on YouTube saved my butt today. So I work for a joinery company and I was delivering a load to a construction site about an hour away from work. And whenever I'm out and about, I just play Reddit compilation videos through my headphones. I was about 8 minutes into a video when, in the middle of a town at a red light with a bad feeling of deja vu, the video started buffering. I thought it was odd since I had good reception but was just going to wait it out. The lights went green and the video played just long enough to say the word wait and started buffering again. I couldn't see anything at all. The road was clear, but I thought I'd listen. I looked left, then right again, and there was a massive semi at speed that appeared out of nowhere and ran the red light. It would have taken out the driver's side of the cab, and I'd been toast if I didn't wait. Definitely reminded me of my own mortality. Have you ever experienced a brief state of consciousness where you realized how crazy it is that anything exists? Throughout my life, I've experienced many short moments, usually around sleep/wake, or after deep contemplation, where everything would suddenly look unfamiliar, and it would be accompanied by this intense awe at how anything exists. It's happened a handful of times and only lasts about 5 to 10 seconds. Things feel normal again. I call it a state of consciousness to differentiate it from just thinking about existence that isn't accompanied by this sort of derealization. It literally feels like for a few brief seconds you have bypassed some type of software block that doesn't want you to go beyond and you are quickly pulled back in. It's also a bit scary when you are in that state. Has anyone else ever experienced this? Reply: I have these all the time. The ones that get me the most are the mystery of consciousness and what is actually powering this reality we live in. We are all concurrently experiencing these things, but I'm the only one seeing it from this unique perspective, which is not so unique because everyone else is experiencing it too. When I die, it's hard to me to grasp that the rest of the world will go on existing, while complete blackness will take over for me, and I will cease to be. Similar to the experience of anesthesia, it's very hard to put into words how I feel. I think that reality is God itself. We are a divine being, experiencing itself from multiple different angles. This made my spine shiver. 20 years old male. So to put into perspective, my girlfriend of 2 years, 19 years old female, lost her mother unexpectedly 6 months before her and I met. Her mother and her were very close. They were practically best friends. Now, it's New Year's Eve, and we're headed to her best friend's house for a party. My girlfriend decides to wear one of the last things her mother gave her before she passed away, a pair of gold earrings. At some point throughout the night, she loses an earring. Devastated, we all retrace our every step, and we do manage to find the backing to it, but no earring. It's now 24 hours later. I'm lying in her bed by myself with no clothes on while she's in the shower. I'm reading a book when all of a sudden the fucking earring gets dropped onto my bare chest out of nowhere. I look around. Nobody else in the room. Nobody else in the house. Just my girlfriend mindlessly showering in the room beside me. My friend and I died in a car crash, then we respawned/reset. I am convinced quantum immortality or parallel dimensions exist to a degree. I think I might have shared this already, but I need to go more into detail with what happened. About 6 to 8 years ago, my friend Giovanni and I left my house to go get some late night McDonald's. You know, just as young fellas do at 2 a.m. after a night of partying, etc. We got into his white Mustang, left the neighborhood, and began driving on one of the main roads towards McDonald's, which was about 2 miles away. As we cross an intersection just about a half a mile away from McDonald's, we get slammed by another car and thrown, and we proceed to roll. All I remember from the impact is that the car was speeding very fast. The impact was brutal. Glass shards flew everywhere, and the sound of plastic and metal scraping the asphalt. We died upon impact. We were gone. Then it all just went black. I saw that the car was annihilated, looking at it from above. The scene was distressing. Then just as soon as the scene played out of our deaths, it abruptly ended, and we automatically went back, and we were both standing at the front door, about to leave to McDonald's. I look over at Gio, and Gio is tearing up, shaking with his hands on the doorknob. I say, "Bro, what the fuck was that? If we leave and go right now, we're going to die in a car crash." All he replied with was something along the lines of, "I know." Gio was shaking terribly, and I felt sick to my stomach. We had both just lived our deaths. We both stepped away from the door and walked back into my family room and sat on the couch and didn't say a word to each other and just stared off into the distance. I had lived my own death, and so did he. We both knew it, and we both had no idea how to explain it. The best way I can explain it is, it felt like a dream where it's one of those almost too real of dreams. We assertedly left the house and almost made it to McDonald's, but we got hit at an intersection, then flashed back almost immediately to my house. If y'all ever seen that episode of Rick and Morty where Morty gets a do-over control, it was exactly like that. It's like we experienced and lived our deaths, then simply had to do over and respawn to 10 to 15 minutes earlier. We were also sober. We're from Utah. We were in high school at the time. No drinking or drugs back then. Partying in the sense of dance parties in Utah, which are a thing here. I found a VHS tape of myself as a child at my in-laws' house. This all started a few weeks ago when my husband decided to go into his parents' attic in the garage to see if any of his old Pokemon cards are worth any money. His mom kept literally every toy he's ever had, so there are dozens of boxes of his things that we've been going through. We found a box that clearly hasn't been opened in a long time. It was taped up and had plastic grocery bags laid on the top from a store that hasn't been around in town since the 90s, and it's full of his family's old VHS home videos. His parents documented so much of his childhood, so every night we've watched a home video after supper with his parents, and it's been really fun. The videos are from the late 80s and early 90s. A few nights ago, my husband put a new tape in the VHS player, and the first thing we see is my cousin's 16th birthday party from 1994, and I am in the video. His parents have no idea how they have this tape, and the weirder thing is, we have no idea who filmed this tape. I've asked all my aunts and uncles, and no one knows what I'm talking about. The video also has me hunting for Easter eggs at my aunt's house, also in 1994. My parents never owned a video camera, so it's not their tape. It doesn't make any sense how my in-laws have this tape. We've been trying to come up with logical explanations for it, but we can't. My in-laws say that the box of tapes hasn't been opened since they put it in the attic when the garage was built in 2002, which is before I even met my husband. I would have only been 11 years old when they built the garage, so it's been up there this entire time. It's not like I somehow brought this tape over and forgot about it. Quantum immortality. Is the glitch the fact that some people remember being reset? I'm really interested in the idea of quantum immortality. Here's an article of John McAfee who uses Russian roulette to freak out reporters. There's thousands of examples on here of people who were sure they should have died but didn't. Some have a vision where the up-and-coming death is shown and averted, and some describe it as a reset after the event. But in all the cases, they are convinced it is real. So I started thinking about how often this might happen and whether it happens without anyone realizing it happened. In this case, the glitch wouldn't be the reset. The glitch would be in fact that someone recognized the reset had occurred. So I started thinking about my life and tried to work out how many times I might have survived unexpectedly, and the number proved to be quite high. I've jotted a few down so you can judge and compare with your own life. I thought there might be others who had some close scrapes with death. 2 car accidents that could have easily been fatal. One was spinning out of control on a motorway, the other being stopped going down a steep drop by a rickety fence post, at least 10 electrocutions by mains electricity, 2 skiing accidents, 1 house fire, a heart attack, and a bypass surgery. The point being that each one of these could have resulted in death, but if I didn't experience the reset glitch, I just think I was lucky. So I just wondered if anyone else could recall close calls that would have resulted in death, but without any apparent reset or preview. I think I saw future me, and she saw me too. This happened yesterday and it still makes me uncomfortable. I was at a train station on my way back from work when I saw a couple. What drew my attention was the fact that they were speaking my language, so I looked at them. The woman was built and looked exactly like me, and I don't have a very common appearance for the country I live in, but about a decade older, and the man was an aged carbon copy of my current boyfriend. But what really set my creepy radar off was the following. She had the tattoo I always wanted to get, exactly where I wanted to get it, and it's very professional design, only my best friend knows about, so not a common tattoo. He was speaking my native language with a very distinct accent of his home country, which is similar but not the same as the way people from my country we live in speak my language. So I looked at them when they were facing the other way, feeling extremely creeped out. It was then that the woman turned around and saw me, freezing instantly as if she had seen a ghost. Then I finally managed to look away and run towards the exit. I really feel like I'm going insane here. It was as if she or I remembered that exact moment and knew exactly when and where to look for me. I didn't tell anyone because I don't want them to think I'm completely nuts. My dad's gut feeling. I was 17 at the time, and me and my dad had just finished our fishing trip, and it was almost midnight, mid-fall. When I was about to get in the car, he told me that he did not want me to sit in the front seat on the ride home. We argued about it for about 5 minutes, and he did not give any good reason to why he did not want me to. I gave up and got in the back seat. It was pitch black outside. When we had been driving on the main road for about 2 minutes, we saw a car driving in our lane. Right as we were about to collide, my dad swerved into the other lane, and so did the car in front of us. I heard my dad say, "I knew it," at the very last second, and then I blacked out. Woke up when police showed up at the scene. They helped me out of the car. I was barely conscious, and I don't remember much after that. Only thing that is still crystal clear in my memory is that I saw my dad sitting in the car waving at me with tears in his eyes. When I later asked where my dad was, I was told that he had flown out of the car window and landed only a few feet from the car and passed away in the ambulance. I was told the man we crashed with died on impact and also had a 17-year-old daughter in the back seat who survived. I still can't believe that this really happened. This was 6 years ago. Wow, have you ever reached out to the 17-year-old daughter from the other car to see if she had any similar stories? As both of you were in the back seat, maybe both of your dads saved your lives that night. Still doesn't explain why he was on the wrong side of the road. I'm very sorry for your loss and that you had to experience that. I wonder what the other girl's side of the story is. I think I just became the background character for another person's glitch. This technically happened last night, but I was just starting a graveyard shift and I'm only now getting it all down. I work at a gas station chain with only numbers in its name. We're just outside of a large chunk of suburbs, none of that middle of nowhere. Like we aren't exactly near any other business, but we rarely completely see dead hours at a time. It was just past midnight, and with everything going on in the US right now, not a lot of things other than gas stations and bars are open at night anymore. So it was a slower evening. I was the only one in the store, and a car pulled up to one of the 2 double-sided pumps out front. Pretty standard white 4-door. I'm not great with car brands, but it was a little nicer, like upper middle class, and probably only a few years old. A woman gets out and starts walking towards our door like she's in a daze. Legit, this woman looked like she saw a ghost. She wandered up, sort of freezes at the door for a second with a 1,000-yard stare before opening it and coming in. She didn't go looking for anything, didn't start shopping, just sort of stood there inside for a while, like for ages. Again, bars are still open, so I think maybe she's a little drunk or had a rough night or something. So I give the usual welcome to the gas station, let me know if you need any help finding anything. And she finally notices me and immediately asks me the weirdest damn question I have ever heard at my job. "You can see me, right?" "Yeah, like what else are you supposed to say?" She breaks down crying in the middle of the store, and I'm already headed around the corner to see what's up. I have my cell phone out in case I need to call the cops or something for her. I get her to sit down on a nearby pallet of soda and grab her a bottle of water after she catches her breath a little. She tells me, I thought I had died. Again, I'm thinking maybe she's on something, but she's a middle-aged woman who looks like a standard local suburban housewife. We're a pretty boring township, without your average junkies like you'd find closer to the cities. So she asks if she can call her husband to pick her up and wait with me. She has her own phone and does so, not really telling him either, just where she's at and if he can come get her. He says he'll call an Uber and be there as soon as possible. We're waiting. So far, nobody else has showed up, so I'm keeping most of my attention on her, and eventually she starts to explain it to me. I was driving home from dinner with my coworkers, and as I'm driving through nearby intersection, I recognized a truck ran a red light and hit me. Now, her car is still at the pump without a scratch on it. She goes on to say she remembers her car being pushed into a pole, going airborne, and then nothing. I tried to calm her down, letting her know that her car was out front and it looks fine, but she insisted that she completely blacked out, woke up in an ambulance for a split second, passed out again, and then woke up again in the driver's seat of her car, at the intersection, waiting for a light to change, perfectly fine. This whole thing freaked her out so much that she drove to the nearest anything, which was us, just so she could get out of her car. Husband eventually showed up to get her. He asked if I had any idea what happened, and even though she sort of explained it to me, I just shrugged because no, I had no idea what was happening anymore. She reluctantly got into the passenger seat of the car, and he drove them back home. That was hours ago, after which I worked an entire shift at the station, trying to wrap my head around what the absolute hell I had just witnessed. I created my boyfriend in The Sims, years before I met him. When I was a teenager living in Vienna in the small country of Austria, I excessively played The Sims. I created all kinds of families there, with all kinds of crazy stories. Most of them were unrelated to anyone I knew, just straight out of my imagination. As the game got developed to the Sims 4 version, the details got much on point when it came to creating your Sims. I was always very hesitant to create myself or anyone I knew because I would feel bad if anyone died in the game, as they would portray my real life people. I also didn't want to put anything quote-unquote out there, if you know what I mean, like attracting anything bad. With The Sims 4 though, I decided to create myself with a different last name though, matching my Sims husband's name. The husband was of color, as my celeb crush was 50 Cent. I was 17 years old, by the way. Was wearing a black tank top, camouflage pants, trainers, and a black watch. They lived a happy life together, had kids, and made sure they died peacefully, as I did believe in a tracking situation. I met my boyfriend 2 years ago after I moved to London. We are in a very happy relationship. One day we were at a market and it was really hot there, so I bought a dress so I can change into something more light, and my boyfriend brought some pants in thin material. He asked if I liked them and I turned and it was some camouflage sweatpants. I said yes and we proceeded to go home. We lived a minute away to change. We changed our clothes and my boyfriend asked me if he looked good. I finished dressing up and looked at him to check his clothes, and he was wearing a black tank top, the camouflage sweatpants, trainers, and a black watch. I had just bought him as a present some weeks ago. I immediately realized he looked like my husband in The Sims I created years ago. I started laughing and told him, "You look like my Sims." He looked at me confused, and as I told him what I meant, he told me, "Oh, so you are attracted to me in real life," with a cheeky smile, and guess he was right. That was my most glitch moment I've ever had, but I don't regret it at all. Edit, some extra info I forgot to mention here. I also created my husband and many other husbands for my Sims, with the traits of an artist, as I want to have nice pictures in the house of my Sims. My boyfriend is an artist himself, and we have loads of pictures up he drew. If this is really the Matrix, they really paid attention to details. And those were some interesting stories coming to us from the Glitch in the Matrix subreddit. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you later.